Hello, everyone. Once again, this is Rakhi Gautam from greytHR. Thank you so much for taking out the time and joining us on this thought leadership webinar called greytHR Meets. Today's webinar is brought to you by greytHR in partnership with Blue Chip Computer Systems LLC. And the topic for today's webinar is highly anticipated. It is the role of HR tech in enhancing employee experience. Now, before we dive into the topic, and I'm sure you all are eager to, learn the insights that we are going to get, let's do a little housekeeping on how the session goes. So the session is divided in two parts. The first part will be the presentation by our partner, which will then be followed by an in-depth discussion with our expert for today on the topic role of HR tech in enhancing employee experience. Also, we have a dedicated Q&A session towards the end. So if you have any questions, you can start putting across those questions even from now on. Some might get covered in the conversation that we have. Or if you have any other questions apart from that, you can still ask, and we will take those questions towards the end. Also, this session is currently being recorded. So if you happen to miss out on anything, do not worry at all. We've got you covered. We will share the recording with you once it is done. And also, this webinar's recording will also be uploaded on our greytHR's official YouTube channel under the playlist Great HR Meets. So you can always go there and watch it later and share it with your peers as well. Now, before we start the session, I would request Mr. Robin, Senior Corporate Sales Manager from Blue Chip Computer Systems LLC, to come and, of course, virtually give a short presentation on what Blue Chip Computer Systems is and its association with greytHR. Over to you, Robin.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. I'm very happy to see you all here in this session. Actually, we are Blue Chip Computer Systems LLC. We are actually ISO certified.
Robin, I would. Yes, I'm so sorry to interrupt in between. Before we start, if you could please share the presentation as well. And I
Yes.
would request Ankita to stop your presentation in the meantime. Thank you. Yes, it's visible.
Are you able to see our screen? Okay. Actually, we are Blue Chip Computer Systems LLC. We are ISO certified system integrator company. We are started in 2012 with the 5 persons, and we are having 7 branches now with 200 plus employees. And we are having 2,500 plus satisfied customers, and we have delivered thousands plus projects. And another thing is we are having the partnership levels, like we are having Dell EMC Gold Partner. We are Lenovo Gold Partner. We are having partnership with the HPA, and we are having partnership with the Sophos. Sophos, we are Gold Partnership, and we are having a lot of partnership levels, and as well as we are having Microsoft Platinum Partner. So we are giving the catering the all kind of customers like government, SMB, enterprise, all kind of customers, and we are having giving the solutions, full-fledged solutions we can give in IT, and we are having divisions like cyber security division we are having, and we are having managed services division, and we are having ELV division. ELV in the sense like CCTV, structured cabling, fiber cabling, and all kind of systems we are doing. And also in managed services we are doing like IT infrastructure management, desktop management. We are having our SOC team and NOC team. We are situated in India. They are sitting in Gujarat. So we can provide that kind of services as well, and we are having dedicated team for the server storage, all the type of configurations and everything. I'm not taking much time actually, and we are also partnered with the greytHR. We are already closed a couple of good opportunities with have a partnership with greytHR. It's a great appreciation to us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robin, for that quick presentation. Thank you so much. And in case anybody has any questions related to Blue Chip or Great HR, we can take them up towards the end. Now, quickly moving on to the discussion that we have with our expert. In today's evolving workplace, employee experience is crucial to attracting, engaging, and retaining talent. In this discussion today, we'll be exploring the key components of employee experience and how HR technology plays an essential role from streamlining, onboarding, and boosting engagement to leveraging data for deeper insights into employee satisfaction. We'll also dive into the latest innovations shaping the future of HR tech and discover how the right tools can transform EX, creating a positive and productive environment that benefits both employees and organizations. And of course, to decode all of that and to share her insights with us today, joining us is Ms. Devika Valsaraj, HR leader, founder, and speaker at AHAM Leadership Consulting. Let me quickly take you all through Devika's profile. Devika is an accomplished HR leader with over 18 years of rich experience across the MENAT region, specializing in strategic HR initiatives. Her career highlights include supporting iconic projects at Emaar Group, such as Burj Khalifa and Address Hotels, and fostering culture and engagement for Emaar's global entities. As the former regional director of people and talent at MCN Middle East Communications Network, she managed HR for 7 global agency brands, consistently aligning HR strategies with business objectives. Named among Asia's rising 100 women power leaders in 2023, Devika excels in talent management, securing accolades like Great Place to Work certifications. Her expertise spans real estate, hospitality, HR tech, and advertising. And through AHAM Leadership Consulting, she promotes growth via her E4P model. Technologically skilled in Oracle, SAP SuccessFactors, and Microsoft Dynamics, she is certified in people analytics and predictive index as well. Devika is also a mother, motivational speaker, and a meditation enthusiast. Oh my God, I think we've gotten the perfect person with us today who has joined us. Thank you so much, Devika, for taking out the time. It's a pleasure to host you.
Thank you for a very generous introduction. I must say, Raki, thank you. It's my pleasure to be with you all this afternoon. And yes, let's talk about my favorite topic, employee experience.
Definitely. Okay, so to start off with, how would you define employee experience and why has it become such a priority for organizations today? We were just discussing this, before this call as well.
I'm glad you asked. There are quite a few textbook definitions out there, but to keep it very simple, I would say employee experience is the art and science of making sure work doesn't feel like a Monday, but more like a meaningful journey. So right from the first hello to the, if it comes to it, the final goodbye handshake, we make sure as HR practitioners, as well as leaders, to ensure we leave a positive experience with every talent that walks in through that door. So that's how I would define employee experience.
Thank you so much, Devika. And I'm sure everybody would, agree with you on this. Now, in your opinion, we talk about employee experience. And as I said, more more discussions are happening nowadays as compared to earlier times. So in your opinion, what are the core elements of a positive employee experience, and which should companies focus on first, if there's a strategy or a roadmap that we can follow?
Of course. Rakhi, as you rightly mentioned, it is becoming more and more important, especially in a very disrupted post-VUCA world where post-pandemic things have changed how people come together to work, be it remote or in a hybrid setting. There is a huge war for talent. Geopolitically as well, there's a lot of shifts in markets that traditionally used to supply talent. So availability of the best and retention of these critical resources is becoming more important, especially when you have more tech opportunities coming in as well. So getting them upskilled is one bit, but making them want to stay with you through the entire journey is another more Herculean task for most leaders and HR practitioners. So I do believe that we are having this conversation at the right time. Now, when you think about the elements that underplay how you plan your employee experience roadmap, it all begins at the center. That's why my practice is called AHAM. It's it's the why behind everything that you do. And the strategy needs to evolve from that piece. So when you look at the 7 spokes of the employee life cycle, where it comes from talent attraction, the candidate experience, then finally recruiting somebody, onboarding them, developing them, ensuring that they have the right learning opportunities and roadmaps, ladders and lattices, rewarding and recognizing your people, and then looking at progression and performance. And again, having those retention, stay conversations, or unfortunately having to part ways and get them to leave with a positive experience is very, very important. So when you're planning your strategy, you have these 7 spokes of the entire life cycle in front of you. You're looking at different elements, and this is where tech comes in, especially when you're looking at a remote or a hybrid workforce where you have people with you, where you can have that one-on-one interaction. But at the same time, what happens when you have dynamic talent, somebody you're recruiting from Brazil, or you're recruiting someone from South Africa or the Philippines? It gets more challenging to engage them across time zones. And that's when how easy, how intuitive the tech is for them from their point of view, how aesthetic the complete UI and interface is for an employee so that it's appealing. It's more of a pull versus a push when it comes to deploying these tools to ensure the life cycle works seamlessly and you're not spending additional resources to get them to adopt the technology that you've invested in.
Rightfully said. Thank you so much, Devika, for that. And as you said, previously, we've been talking about how sort of it was always significant, right? But the focus on employee experience was not that much in in earlier times. And with there's of course a lot of negatives that came with pandemic, but a lot of opportunities that did arise was the use of technology and how it has completely transformed the way we work today. We would not have these frequent webinars before the pandemic era, or the Microsoft Teams where we could just quickly connect, right? So when you talked about different teams coming together and working from different countries, not just different states or cities, we have these tools where we can connect easily with, and it is something that is easily accessible and easily understandable as well. So whenever we, not just in terms of workforce management, but also when when we get HRMS, say, or when we have these leave and attendance management or attendance that we do, if we have something where we just go and click, it just happens, and it is easier to do that way rather than going to office every day and having to punch in or punch out. So with technology, of course, a lot of good employee experience has come, and a lot of opportunities have definitely come into the picture. So moving on to my next question, which is, there is one way to, of course, providing good employee experience, positive employee experience, but how do we do that? You did mention about rewards and recognition, or regular performance feedbacks that we do, or just having a transparent communication with your team members. So in order to do that, of course, we have to also keep people and employees engaged, right? So if I am working remotely and my manager sits somewhere else, and I'm not having that one-on-one connects, how do we keep them engaged still? That is a big question that comes in. So there's also a recent study which was done by Gallup that states that only 23% of employees feel engaged at work. Now, this is a question that is often asked in leadership meetings as well. Why are our employees not feeling engaged or motivated? So, in your opinion, how can HR tech improve engagement specifically and help organizations address these low engagement rates?
I'm glad you asked this question, Rakhi. In fact, I had written very recently a thought piece on this specific point, especially when you're dealing with Gen Zs who are digital natives. They know their technology. They demand flexible, intuitive accesses, interfaces that look good. They're simplified. So for them, I think the first piece is not to focus on just the tech. It is very important, choosing the right one. But you, as HR practitioners, it's our responsibility to first do the work, do the research, as you would when you were thinking about customer experience. So similar to UX, EX also demands that you invest in a proper design thinking philosophy. You're looking at how the entire life cycle translates into an experience. So what are your policies? What are the processes? What forms need to be filled? Does it need to be filled? Do you need to have 10 signatures, or would 2 authorized approvers do in a specific workflow? Having business process experts come in to help you simplify processes, because again, the new workforce that's entering this market demands that we've done our homework. So once this is done, you know the why behind why you're going about getting new tech. It's easier to evaluate different vendors out there, depending on your budget, your overall business strategy, the locations that you're operating in, the type of payroll requirements that you have, the type of compliance-related regulations you need to look into. You can choose a vendor. But the groundwork, the homework, it's our responsibility.
Definitely, definitely. And once the HR team, the management does it, they have to also, of course, train the employees that, okay, this is how it works. Because sometimes there's this gap, right? We get one technology and we're like, okay, this is easy to do. We will do one session with you and you will, know how to do it. But until that proper training is given to the employees and they are able to use it easily, I think that is where, it all works better and you would be able to see the results. Otherwise, it's like, okay, I was not feeling engaged before and now I'm not able to do my work either. So we have to be very cautious of the execution of these technological advancements that we're having in our systems.
I agree, Raki. And if I may share one anecdote,
Definitely.
I think in my 18 plus years in HR, one of the things that we've always done is adopt the technology and then train people to use it. And you do this training every year. For example, if it's performance management for people who don't necessarily interact with the HRMS. And what I've realized is that if it's complicated, you can invest in N number of trainings, but it doesn't support the adoption. The current generation, and all of us actually, we engage with Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. Nobody taught us how to use it. It was intuitive, and you can learn as you are exploring the system. And that's how the next generation of HR softwares and solutions need to be. They need to be intuitive, because that's what our customers, our employees will demand, are already demanding, in fact.
Definitely, definitely. Spoken like a true HR professional. Okay, moving on to my next question. We are talking about, HRMS and, technology that we are using in HR now. So, when a person joins in, of course, there's first that talent acquisition, then recruitment, and then comes the most important bit, right? When in life also we say there are three, okay, important moments in your life. Once when you are born, then once in the middle when you have like the greatest of greatest moments in your life, and then when you die, right? So when somebody joins a company as well, right, there are two important times: once when they are joining and once when they're leaving. So when they're joining in, right, we have to provide them the best onboarding experience that is there out that is out there. So with HR tech, how do you think, how can HR technology streamline onboarding to make it more welcoming and efficient and just seamless for the employees who are joining in?
All right. Yes, you mentioned there are two key moments when people remember their experience with the company. And I would like to actually go back to a theoretical law. It's called the peak end rule when it comes to UX, and be it with the customer angle or employee experience. And the peak end talks about you as a human being, psychologically, we remember the best moment that we've had across our journey. And when the journey ends, that's the end. So the peak and the end. So the peak could be when you get that job offer. For someone, it could be when they get promoted. For another, it could be when their boss recognized them publicly for doing a good job. And for another, it could be the compassion that was shown when they were dealing with a mental health challenge and the company went out of its way to help them. So the moments differ. And tech, I feel, is just an enabler. It's not the end all. I know it's a great tip and we need to talk about tech, but at the end of the day, we're talking about HR tech and it has to talk about and focus around the human. And as long as we are looking at moments that matter and aligning automated experiences that help make it more commonsensical, so to speak, where they don't have to invest in too much time in trying to download it, process documents through 10 million steps, but it's a few clicks, it's intuitive, it's welcoming, the UI looks great, appealing, then it works. And then if it's onboarding or offboarding or any of the other important milestones for an employee, it works. That's my two
Definitely.
cents on this topic.
No, no, we definitely agree. And a lot of our HR professionals who have joined us today would agree with you on that. And, again, I want to say, spoken like a true HR professional, because you just not focused on two important moments. It's the whole cycle that is there. And all those moments are contributing to the overall employee experience. So we have to, cater to the demands or the requests of our employees and have to ensure that they are getting the best experience that they can with different elements which are there. Thank you so much, Devika, for that. Now, we when we talk about technology, we can't help but also talk about data, right? And
Yes.
in recent times, we have seen the emphasis on data and how data can help us understand so many things, right? Help us identify patterns and identify gaps which are there, and then also suggest how we can do better. So, how important is data when it comes to improving, of course, employee experience? And if there are certain metrics that you would say that, okay, these are the metrics that organizations should be tracking to gain, useful insights.
Okay. Data is at the fulcrum of strategy. So when we're looking at that wheel and we're looking at that middle point of that wheel, data feeds into strategy because then you know whether the KPIs that you set at the beginning of this endeavor is successful or not. What gets measured gets done. So it's super important, especially when you're investing in tech, being able to demonstrate value through numbers and metrics definitely helps. If you're on a journey and it's a 2 to 3 year long implementation cycle where it sticks, you have attrition, people coming and going, you need to get people to adopt, definitely all those elements play a huge role. But I would also look at, and as you asked, survey data in terms of how people feel the initiatives that the HR team have invested in are helping them. So it's not about just winning the awards, but is it actually helping them do their jobs faster? Is it helping or contributing towards their productivity? Because I can feel happy today and I can rate my employee experience as 8 on 8. But if I'm having a bad day and my computer is not starting properly, or it's getting delayed, or I have to restart 10 times, I'm going to give a very bad rating. And that's not a true indicator. It's about how easy or how effective the tool is in making their work faster so that they can do more meaningful things at work, not just HR people, but our employees as well. So if you're looking at timesheets, for example, and if timesheets is a cumbersome process and they're spending a few minutes or even an hour trying to update their timesheets versus this being an intuitive in the background process, we are losing productive hours from that talent. So that's what we need to start measuring: productivity versus, the mood meters and how happy I am, because that changes.
Definitely. Thank you so much for that, Devika. And just something that came to my mind is now these HRMS platforms also, when we punch in, or maybe during the day, we keep getting these pop-ups, right? How are we feeling today? And there are these emoticons, and we can just select and say, okay, I'm feeling, really irritated, or I'm feeling fantastic. So do you think those could help us maybe track something, not like short term, but if we track it long term, and then maybe identify, okay, during, say, for HR professionals, if we are talking about them, towards the end of the month there's a lot of payroll processing, right? And that's again, kudos to those who do it so efficiently, right? So when they are working on it, of course there's a lot of data, this and that, and I might feel very challenged at work during those times. So do you think those could be the metrics that we should focus on, or these are just momentary things that we should generally avoid, and focus on KPIs versus how much we were able to achieve, and that would be the right metric for productivity?
I wouldn't say avoid. It
Mhm.
has its purpose when you're looking at from a predicting employees who are at flight risk, for example, because then you
Mhm.
know if there's a consistent decline in someone's mood at work, there is some intervention required from an HR angle. But I do feel that when you're looking at metrics, one is productivity, the other bit would be in terms of exit interview data, where employees are saying that they had the right tools to enable them to be effective on their job. Because we hire talent for this and usually for this, not for this, unless you're a developer, for example, right? So if that's the case, we need to be making sure that they're not spending more time trying to figure out a system, but it's just enabling, it's there running in the background, making it much easier for them to get the job done. I have worked with a vendor, I'm not naming names, but it was an engagement bot that helped us get daily reports, mood metrics on people who are happy, who are sad, who are having a challenging day at work on a daily basis, that was being fed to the CEOs. Now, that's effective because you can see the individuals that you need to probably pay attention to during that day. It also helps us predict people who are at flight risk, to have those interventions. We all have to comply with regular engagement surveys to understand, again, what kind of feedback, any whistleblowers, governance issues, those bits are going to be there. There's a lot of admin involved. If there's a tech that helps, and I think now there's a lot coming in thanks to GPT as well, where it's able to summarize that vast amount of data to action steps and action points. Definitely all good. But if we have to look at effectiveness of tech, we need to see how easy it is for our employees to use it
Definitely,
and what
definitely.
makes them want to stay.
Definitely, yes, because I wouldn't want to again, learn something and it's becoming really hectic. I'm not able to focus on my work. So as long as it's easy to use, the interface looks great and easy to navigate. I think everybody would be happy with that. So thank you for that, Devika. Moving on to my next question, which is, of course, we're talking about technology, and now we also see employee self-service apps which are coming on our mobile phones as well, right? So there was also a recent report by Deloitte that highlighted that 56% of companies are redesigning their HR programs to leverage digital and mobile tools. So, in terms of innovations, right? Uh, what are the innovations that you see that will be there in HR tech coming forward, and that are definitely set to reshape the employee experience in the future?
I'm glad you asked that. I think 7 years ago, when we were working on two chatbots in my time during IMA, we had a question asking bot, a question answering bot, and the question answering bot was developed in-house, where we got it to integrate with various ERPs so that it could get a lot of information, salary certificates, um, right at the fingertips of our employees. It helps, but we were also exploring how we can get that experience to move further into an app. Apps are useful as long as they're light, they are user friendly, it auto updates, and it also serves multiple purposes. One thing that we've always heard feedback from is when you have apps, you have multiple apps for different use cases of the employee or the company, and you're asked to download 4 or 5 apps from the time you join the company. It kills the experience. It doesn't last, it doesn't stick, and it's a nice to have, but it's not a must have. So if you're able to come up with an app which goes through the entire employee experience from start to that fateful exit, then it works because they want to keep it. There is recognition, there's gamification, there's access to learning. If they have to look at their succession mapping or future career potential, networking opportunities, employee communities, that makes sense because then you'd want to download it on your phone. It's still light. It's not very heavy on your phone. Not all employees afford an iPhone or a Samsung, and making sure it's accessible. That works. I hope that
Definitely.
answers the question.
Definitely does. And, as you said in the beginning, also, technology is an enabler. It is not here. We have created technology, right? And as long as it's easy to use, I think as everybody would be happy with it. So instead of having multiple apps, if we are able to come up with a solution with an HRMS or an ESS portal that has everything combined in just one place, I think that would really help us enhance the employee experience at the end of the day. So thank you, Devika, for that. Now
Sure.
moving on to my next question, which is, nowadays, especially for large enterprises with diverse workforce from different countries to uh, say very diverse workforce, right? So for them, how do you think technology can help enhancing their employee experience? With, of course, there's just not one, nothing like one solution fits all sort of thing, right? So there has to be a lot of personalization involved. So how can large enterprises with diverse workforce enable something like that with the use of technology?
I think the first thing that we need to look at is how user-friendly it is from a language perspective. And then, of course, the legislation prevalent in different countries, from collecting data privacy, those pieces. So the compliance piece is super important, especially when you're trying to deploy tech in certain markets, especially in this region as well. But language is another key enabler. I've personally seen it in certain demographics. It does speed up the adoption if people can understand it from their language perspective. Again, it boils down to the homework that is done by the HR team in ensuring that the translations sound right. It's not a Google Translate exercise, but it's well thought out and it's easy for them to use.
Okay. So, sure. Thank you for. Would you like to maybe elaborate a little more on, say, companies who are who it's like say startups, right? They have started now, and it's been say 2 3 years in the market, or some companies, some startups we see in 6 months they have like amazing results and they have expanded their workforce, right? But they do still have some budget restraints. So. Are there any suggestions for for those companies,
I
like how
believe
can
budget
they?
becomes it's a very good question because I think this is one of the biggest constraints that most organizations face. And budget is usually a constraint or a restriction when you're not able to identify an ROI. And here's why we need to still go back to the strategy piece and identify what we are trying to achieve from adopting this technology. So I'll give you a simple example. When we wanted to deploy the bot, this was the question asking engagement bot. It was a considerable investment. We made a business case to ensure that we could take on that risk of trying or iterating this particular tool with just our new hires. And at that point, we were bulk recruiting. We had a huge number of people coming in. And one of the pain points or the use cases was attrition. So if we could show that we have reduced that attrition rate by 20%, so you can just imagine what the actual attrition rate was, we would be able to justify investing it to investment so that we can scale this product across the organization into our different territories as well. And we were able to achieve that. Of course, it took time. And any tech intervention requires a lot of patience and your homework. You need to know the numbers so that you can speak the language of business leaders and your CFOs and your CTOs as well at some point in justifying that, yes, this is a cost that we are encountering. And by deploying this kind of a enabler, we are going to be able to demonstrate these savings or enhance productivity. So that piece is super important. Once that's done, budget is not necessarily a constraint. Then coming back to your point on execution and the right implementation, having the right team, project managing it is super important to make sure you're able to have those numbers and justify that investment.
Definitely. Thank you so much for that, Devika, for that insight. My last question was similar to this only, but yes, just to maybe summarize this conversation that we have today, what advice would you like to give to HR leaders or, HR leaders who have joined us today also, who are
Mhm.
just beginning their journey to transform employee experience using technology, right? So there have been some initiatives that they have been driving, some cultural programs or providing medical facilities for employee experience, but specifically using technology, and they have just, they're just starting out. What would be your advice to them, and what's the best way to start? And if, as you said in the previous question, that we can't see immediate results, of course it takes time, but just to maybe pitch in and convince, how do we pitch that okay, this is something that we should definitely explore?
I will come back to the same thing that I've been talking about from the beginning, and that's invest time in developing your strategy. Make sure that you have done a design thinking process with your team and key stakeholders in the business to understand what are those milestones for an employee through that entire employee life cycle so that you identify where exactly you're bringing in value by investing in a tool. Don't go for the tool just because every other organization is using it. It might not necessarily serve your purpose if that's not what your employees are looking for, or if you do not have the right bandwidth to implement it effectively. I've seen in my time a lot of tech deployments that have failed, and people are unhappy with the tech. It's not getting used. And after 2 3 years, they are looking at another vendor. So instead, spend the time to do the homework, do the research, get inputs, iterate, test it with a smaller cohort of individuals where you are able to see maximum impact. And that's going to help you justify the numbers when you find yourself in the boardroom and you're looking at that business case scenario. The second part is change management. And this is where what Raki was talking about in the training aspect comes in. But apart from that, enlisting the key stakeholders is super important. And when I talk about key stakeholders, it's not just the employees, it's also your HR team members, those individuals whose transactional or operational work is going to get disrupted by this technology. So you need to get them to be your biggest ambassadors. They need to understand why they are championing this tool. They're not looking at it as a threat in case it's going to make their work easier and faster, because it's going to free up their time to do something else. So you need to have a clear roadmap as to what happens to them after this tech comes in, and they need to run it and they need to make it a success. You can drive initiatives, but if the actual people who are going to get impacted by the tech intervention don't support it, it's going to fail.
Thank you
So
so much.
change management, design thinking. That's my
Definitely. Thank you so much for that, Devika. And I hope everybody has taken note, because this literally just summarized everything that we discussed in this conversation today. It was a pleasure to have this conversation with you, Devika, and a lot of insights that come in. And as we have been discussing, that technology is an enabler, and it is not going to take away our jobs, because there have been a lot of apprehensions also amongst HR professionals, or especially when chat gpt came in, a lot of content writers were like, okay, what am I going to do now? If so But that's what you talked about, the intelligence that we have. It can't just take away human We can't take away humans from human resources. So technology is going to stay, but we have to make it work at the end
yeah.
of the day. So thank you so much, Devika, for such a pleasure, conversation that we had today. I already see some questions lined up in the Q&A panel, so we'll just quickly take those. But for all those who have any questions and they haven't put it yet, you can start putting across your questions now, and we will take them up one by one. So the first question, I think most of it is already covered, but I just go with the first question, which is how to improve employee experience when attrition is already very high.
Well, we have tackled it, but I can go into a little more of the details. So here you need to go back to dissect the data to identify where the attrition is coming from. So what are the pain points that have been shared? So is it because of an HR system, or is it a tech that, like the example that I gave of the timesheets? It is a painful exercise for a lot of people in the creative industry, for example. And if there was an intuitive way of clocking in time, it just makes life easier for them and for the finance team. And if you're able to justify this piece and quantify it in terms of the cost of replacing that type of talent or that caliber of talent just because they feel they spend more productive hours in non-meaningful tasks, you can build a business case, iterate it with a cohort. So it could be your top talent or a certain grade group, and then see how it works, if it actually helps your use case, and then scale it. I hope that
Thank you.
helps.
Definitely does. I hope this answers the question for you, our attendee. Moving on to the next question, which is so we have been discussing positive employee experience. Of course, the opposite of that would be negative. But yes, if you could just share some maybe signs of a negative employee experience that we see.
There's several, but so I've already talked about loss of productive hours. Another piece would be the number of hours an HR practitioner spends in motivating leaders and employees in completing their annual or biennial appraisals. If the system is clunky, it's cumbersome, it is very difficult to get them to do that bit. They might be having the conversations. You can train them to do the meaningful coaching conversations and interventions, but if the system does not resonate with them, they're not going to use it. So and it leaves a bad taste in the mouth, especially, for example, they've put in their comments and their system times out, for example. And they have to redo it all over again, which means they need to again take time out of productive hours to do this for us. Or something as simple as applying for leaves. Again, in fast-paced industries, employees don't necessarily comply with the policies. It's very difficult to get them to put it on the system. They might have already spoken to their managers. They've done the right things, gotten the approvals, but you don't want to be that kind of an HR person who says, have you put it on the system? It should be so simple and so easy that that conversation that they're having with their leader is done through the system.
Right.
Rather than 10 clicks to go log into a platform and get it done. I hope that
Definitely.
answers the question.
Definitely does. Thank you, Devika. Moving on to the last question that I see here is employee experience with technology and employee experience without technology. I mean, I think this is more like a comparison if we have to picture how is it. So if you could, explain this a little bit.
Okay. It depends on the context. So it depends on your scale of the organization as well. So if it's a smaller team, it's not very complex and a human first approach is easy and you have that kind of a HR to employee ratio. Maybe the lack of tech doesn't get felt as much, but the larger and more complex your teams, the more difficult it gets to make sure it's standardized, it's compliant, there's an audit trail, there are things being done in the correct way. So from a compliance perspective, I think there are pros and cons when you look at with tech and without tech. From an enabler perspective, and that's what we've been talking about, if you can avoid killing trees and having 10 forms that need to be filled in manually, and it's one simplified form that reads your Emirates ID data and fills in most of it, and you just need to put in more critical data that's probably private, it needs your consent, it makes it easier for the employee. So it's making things faster so that they can get to work faster, so that they are able to also finish work faster and have more meaningful time with their families or pursue what's more purposeful for them. And at the same time, we are compliant and we get the right information. So that's how I would differentiate with tech and without tech. I hope that
One
answers.
Definitely does, and that's a very clear picture also that you painted for us here. Thank you so much for that, Devika. With that, I think we are done with all the questions. I don't think we have any more questions, but if there's still something or just a comment that you want to leave, anybody from the audience, you can tell us if you like the session, if you found it, insightful, meaningful, and any other question also that you have. But once again, thank you so much, Devika, for taking out the time and joining us today. You have certainly given us a lot of insights on how HR tech has evolved over the years and its impact on employee experience.
It was my absolute pleasure. Thank you for being an excellent facilitator, Raki. I enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for your
Thank you
time.
so much.
Thank you,
Thank you so
audience, for your questions.
Thank you. We also see some feedback from the audience. Srinivasa M, it was a very good session. Hiril also has thanked you for the insightful session, Devika. Thank you
Thank you.
so
Thank
much.
you, everyone.
Thank you. And thank
Thank
you
you,
to
Raki.
our attendees as well who joined us and made it more engaging with these questions that you asked and the feedback that you were sharing. And if you still have any more questions, you can write to the email ID which is displayed on the screen, which is yasser.arafat@creative.com. And we will be sure to get back to you. And as promised in the beginning, this is a recorded session. So this recording will be available on our YouTube channel and will also be sent to each one of you so you can always watch it later. Thank you once again. Thank you, Devika. And thank you, Robin, as well, for being our partner for this webinar.
Thank you,
Thank
great
you all.
THR. Thank you, Raki. Thanks, Robin. See you
Thank
all.
you, everyone.
Thank you for being
Thank
an
you,
excellent
Raki and
audience.
Devika.
Ma salama.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening, everybody ahead.